we were playing. We always throw stuff around here.
I've never thrown anything.
And stop if that's true, we should stop.
And it wasn't a microphone or.
He could have got mad. It would have got worse then. Thankfully, he laughed it off
instead of going the other route.
Right.
Yeah.
Marc, Lamont, Hill, and Emanny go back and forth about the incident, a.k.a. Cupgate. Yeah, that's right. A few days ago, Marc Lamont was thrown and he got violated. Emanny threw an object at Marc Lamont, and it knocked over his coffee or whatever.
You did just what I expected.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yo.
Emanny! But on the podcast today, the crew talked about how, this occurred. And even though it was lighthearted and Joe didn't really go in on Emanny, he did appear to give him some grace by, giving him some guidance, saying that this shouldn't really be happening. And Emanny didn't really take too much accountability, noting that, we do this all the time. This happens all the time up here. People throw things. And that's where Joe Budden stepped in and said, that's really not something we should be doing. And then Joe Budden even dropped a little nugget by saying, Marc could have gotten up or he could have went the other route. And what would that other route be? That other route would be HR. Yes, if Marc decided that he was violated to an extent that he didn't feel comfortable with, he could have went the other route. And that other route might be worse than an actual fight. Now, that's another thing is I do think that Emanny, though he says he's working on himself, I don't think it's really working, because I feel like if Marc continues to hint that he could beat Emanny up, that's going to make Emanny more and more upset. He simply just has too much ego, and I think he's having a tough time managing it. Now, Melissa Ford was the only person who would receive an apology. That's because when Melissa Ford went to help Emanny out because he couldn't read as a result of his glasses, Emanny knocked the glasses out of her hand. But, I feel like he should have directly took accountability to Marc. The only thing is that I feel like Marc is trying to play this character on the show in order to appease a base of people or audience that he never was able to reach. I mean, he's said this before on his channel that he really wants to touch base with an audience that doesn't engage with his content. And I think it's coming at the expense of the healthiness of the show. It's almost like he wants to show, like, I'm not snitching. I keep it real up here. This is Marc Lamont. This is who I really am. But with Marc being an abolitionist, I don't think he believes in the idea of harsh retributions. But I also think that he's actually doing a disservice to Emanny by not trying to hold him accountable and say, don't ever do that again, at least off air. Because if this keeps happening, I'm telling you right now, Emanny will be suspended or at the worst off the show. Only time will tell if Emanny's able to check his ego at the door, because I really thought he was at the point where he wouldn't engage in this type of behavior. So either Emanny needs to do one of two things. He either needs to actually approach Marc Lamont Hill and clearly guide his boundaries and say, hey, when you make fun of me for being stupid, I don't like that. I do believe Marc would fall back if that was the case, or he just needs to fight Marc and then get fired. Those are the two options. And if you get fired, it will be such a stupid mistake. Plus, Emanny's also in an interesting point in his life, right? He just had the health scare. Shout out to Emanny. He was able to navigate that, and he seems okay now. But he also hasn't launched his content, podcast, whatever you want to call it. I think he's making a podcast about R&B music in the vein of, Tank's podcast, what is it called, R&B Money or something like that, or the Sean Stockman Show, and he hasn't launched it. He's been talking about it. A lot of people on the show have been talking about launching projects, right? Marc said he was going to launch his Patreon. Ice said he was gonna do content. Remember, he tweeted out that he was looking for some people to do videos, and that never came out. So you got to give it to Melissa Ford and Flip. It just shows that they really do put themselves out there and may reveal why they are the people that Joe enlisted to take the show to another level when Ish and Ice weren't necessarily as entertaining as they could have been. Now let's see where we go. Another highlight of this episode was that Joe Budden started talking to Ish about InvestFest, and Ish kind of kept it quiet. He didn't really want to talk about it. I think what it is it's hard to open up on that show. If you open up on that show, you got to realize like you're not being surrounded by friends there. You're being surrounded by people who are trying to make the content better. So if you say something like, yo, I can't wait for InvestFest, I'm excited to speak, Joe and Ish, they're going to go through it because Joe's going to make fun of it. Joe's going to be like, oh, look at this. Oh, Ish is going to talk about how houses be housing and houses need houses and then doors. And then he's going to talk about his hoodies and then he's going to try to sell his hoodies for $150. If you don't get yourself out of here because the hoodies don't know. That's the type of stuff Joe's going to do. On air, at least. And most people on air can't distinguish the on-air persona versus the off-air persona. And that's because the two are closely intertwined. Throughout history, to me, most people who have an on-air personality, it is an extension of them, right? Vince McMahon, I always bring this up. Vince McMahon claimed that his personality on air was different, but everybody around him said, nah, Vince McMahon on air was almost the same exact person that he was off air. Howard Stern, same thing. The guy he was on air, delinquent, acting crazy. We was off air. He was the same person, so much so that he had to go through a lot of stuff off air to get right. And I think that's the same thing with Joe. I don't think Joe is anywhere near as bad as Vince McMahon or Stern, because if he was, I think we would be seeing utmost debauchery on the show, craziness and all of that jazz. But let me know what you think about Emanny. I feel like he kind of missed the moment, and perhaps he missed the moment because that platform isn't really the best place to embrace the moment. Accountability isn't really a thing up there, and it's not so much because of Emanny. It's probably because of Joe. But Joe did not seem to like how Emanny dealt with it, and he laid the groundwork for reminding him of this is a workplace, and you do have to deal with things a little bit differently. And that whole, what happens in the street, don't see something, say something. Nah, that's not how it goes. Next time we're going to deal with that. So check yourself before you wreck yourself. Don't get off the show. Make sure you keep everything nice and everything cool. All right, y'all. With that said, that's my video for today. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. Follow me on Patreon, The Stop. I got some content coming there. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.